This is Mabel, and welcome to Thrive at the Top, where we explore how leadership, human performance, and operational systems intersect in high-pressure environments. In this series, we've looked at crisis in aviation through multiple lenses: operational disruption, pandemic exposure, fatigue, technical failure, and today we close with what I consider the most revealing crisis of all: industrial action. Because by the time people stop working, the system has already stopped listening. Strikes are often framed as disruptive, inconvenience, financial loss, operational instability. And a lot of that is true, but it's not the root issue. Industrial action is not the crisis. It is the final escalation of an unresolved one. It is what happens when concerns are raised repeatedly, feedback is ignored, pressure accumulates, and trust breaks down. Across aviation, industrial action is often triggered by fatigue and unsustainable rostering, pay versus workload imbalance, lack of consultation during change, operational pressure without support, and leadership disconnect from frontline reality. But underneath all this, there is a failure of communication and trust, and most importantly, a failure of early intervention. Before a strike happens, there are always signals: increased complaints, rising absenteeism, disengagement, low morale, silence in meetings, reduced reporting. These are not HR issues. These are early indicators of system strain. But in many organizations, these signals are not measured, not escalated, not governed. So what happens? The system continues until it can't. So let's talk about the governance failure here. At board level, industrial action is often treated as a labor relations issue, or a negotiation challenge, or a short-term disruption. But this is where the real failure sits, because governance should have already answered: what is the state of our workforce capacity? Where are the pressure points in our system? Are we tracking early indicators of fatigue and disengagement? Do our people feel safe raising concerns before escalation? If the first time leadership fully engages is during a strike, governance has already failed. Let's look at this through our SAFE Pillars framework lens. Let's start with S, self-awareness. Leaders must recognize early cultural shifts, emotional tone of the workforce, and pressure signals. Not after escalation, but before. Let's talk about A, accountability. Ownership of workforce conditions must sit with leadership. Not deferred, not diluted. Clear accountability equals early action. Let's look at F, for foundations. This is where prevention happens. Do you have structured feedback loops? Do you have workforce monitoring systems? Do you have fatigue and workload visibility? And do you have escalation pathways that actually work? Because without these, issues accumulate silently. And let's look at E, empowerment, our last pillar. This is the most critical layer. If employees feel that speaking is unsafe, raising concerns is ignored, escalation leads to consequences, then eventually they will stop talking. And when they stop talking, they start acting. So let's talk about what strong leaders do differently. Leaders who prevent industrial action: firstly, they listen, not just when disruption begins. Secondly, they treat workforce signals as operational data, not as an opinion. Thirdly, leaders build trust into systems, not rely on personality. And number 4, act before escalation, because prevention is always lower cost than recovery. So let's wrap up this conversation. Industrial action is visible, but the breakdown that leads to it is not. It happens slowly, across conversations, across decisions, and across systems. And when it finally surfaces, it's already been building for a long, long time. If you are operating at executive or board level, now this is the time to assess your exposure. Here at Complete Wellbeing Global, we support organizations in embedding human performance risk governance frameworks, operational continuity protection, cognitive load and workforce capacity monitoring, and decision integrity conditioning at leadership level. book your workplace safety and resilience consultation, because the real question is not how do we respond to a strike, but the question is, why did it get there in the first place? This is Mabel. Until next time, lead well, live well, and don't just survive at the top, thrive.